Hello, I'm Mel from the Open Road, and our guest today is Chris Boyd, co-founder of Monday. Today, thanks to USBG Pittsburgh and USBG Education Week, we are going to be talking about no-proof cocktails or how to integrate alcohol-free spirits or other alcohol-free beverages into your bar and restaurant menus. Again, I'm Mel from the Open Road. I'm based in Pittsburgh. The Open Road is an all non-alcoholic, currently bottle shop, one day future bar. So if you see Open Road Bar, that's COVID. So right now it's all bottle shop. And Monday, gin, they also just came out with a whiskey, literally came in yesterday. So very excited to get that one underway as well. But today we're going to be focusing on the gin. And Monday is one of the current leading alcohol-free spirits brands based in the US. I'll let Chris take it from there. You are in San Diego, right?
Yeah. Hey Mel. Hey everybody. So Monday Spirits started here in Carlsbad, so North County, San Diego, but basically Southern California. Our distilleries in LA, so lots of SoCal vibes there. And I think people may hear the idea of a non-alcoholic spirit and say like, that's an oxymoron, it's kind of strange, why would you do that? And I think like I get it. I talk to tons of people about it too, and I think like when you start to unravel the why, it starts to make sense. And I'll go back to like how we started. And for me it was like a personal moment of, it's like my birthday, it's January, it's like a Sunday, and I have this like high stress job to get back to on Monday. They don't care that it's my birthday today, but I'm gonna go out with some friends, right? So I grab like one gin drink at the bar, I grab two. My buddy like wants to buy the third round, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna switch to water. I've had enough. Like I have a big day in the office, I gotta catch a flight. And they're just like, you can drink whatever you want, man. It's your birthday. And I was like, like tomorrow's Monday, and I want to get after it, right? I don't want to show up hungover to my job that I had to fly to. Like I just didn't need that third drink of alcohol. I didn't need that effect and have a rough sleep and wake up feeling all frazzled. So, it was kind of like, wow, why can't I have the gin that I want without the alcohol that I'm trying to avoid on that third drink? So I switched to water, and I probably just thought about that for a second, went about my day, went about my life, right? And I'd say 3 or 4 months later, kind of this idea popped up because I'm basically done with that job, and I'm chatting with some who's my now co-founder, Ben. Like we basically chatted in the gym one day, and he's like, what are you working on? Like, what are you thinking about? Big entrepreneurial stuff. And like we're just like, what about alcohol, like complex adult flavored beverages that just don't have alcohol, right? And if you want alcohol, you can add your own, of course, but like giving you like this flavor base to build off of. And we're just like, is this just us? Like, are we crazy? Is this really a thing? And so I think we went to our different spaces. He's big online digitally. He can definitely find some online trends, things that are happening in the world virtually. I actually went back to my old roots. So back in the day in my 20s, I worked in San Diego, hospitality, nightlife, bar scene. So kind of went back to my old roots, and I'm just asking people like, hey, are you being asked to make mocktails and non-alcoholic drinks? If you are, how many? Like, what are you doing? How is that going for you? And I think like we kind of compared notes and kind of coming back to like, yes, a lot of people are requesting these, and I think to put on the bartender hat, the folks we're speaking with today, like I didn't get a clear sense that anybody was happy making them because there wasn't a straightforward like set menu they're going off of. So they have to make something on the fly. It's primarily, different combinations of sugar, right? And just like it doesn't come off as a complex beverage, like a grown-up beverage. It's like, syrupy, colas or fruit juices, and there's maybe not a lot to it. And then you're stacking 30 or 40 tickets. You have a ton of drinks to make. The last thing you want to do is stop and make something that's not top of mind, right? And on top of all that, right, there's probably not as high a price to drink or as good a tip coming through as a result. So it's like, wow, as me, the drinker, I'm not getting what I want. It looks like bar staff is being asked to make things that they don't want to make, and they're not really being compensated properly for it. So I'm like, there's got to be something here. So just kind of combining our notes with me and my co-founder, Ben, like he's seeing kind of this dry January movement in the UK come, and it's starting to make its way to the East Coast of America. We're seeing like the sober curious movement. We're seeing this mindful drinking movement kind of pop up a little bit. So we're like, let's lean into this space. We're entrepreneurs. We're like, hey, if something like this exists, like if somebody can scratch our gin itch and it doesn't have alcohol in it, like we'll just be customers. We won't bother. So we tried a couple things. They're like from the UK. We went through that like little journey they took us on of the unboxing experience. They have a cool backstory. We tried them though, and you're just like, wow, this is not gin. This is disappointing, right? And you're just like, God, why can't someone do this? And it was almost like a challenge accepted moment of like, look, I love gin and tonics, but I don't love them for alcohol, like on a Tuesday afternoon, or like right now, it's like 1 o'clock my time here. The last thing I want is alcohol in my system. I got to do something after this, and I need to be like level-headed, right? So kind of one of those things of like, all right, let's try it, right? So we decided to take the plunge, jump in, and calling up distilleries, right, and asking spirits backgrounded folks like, hey, what do you think about this? And the story goes like I got laughed off the phone like 84 times, and I think probably some reasonable responses we could think of, like, why would you take, quote, the best thing out of gin, because then you're just left with gin. And I guess like to me as a gin lover, I was like, I get that some people don't like it, but I'm like, I think there's a way to appreciate that, right? So it was kind of interesting. It was more like challenge accepted. So Call 85 actually happens to be who our distiller is now. Entrepreneurial guy, owns his own distillery in LA, award-winning bourbon maker, but he also makes gin, vodka, and I believe a rum too. So kind of like very much like experimental, super down to like try stuff. So we're like, hey, will you take this crazy ride with us? And he's like, I get it, I see it. I'm not sure we can get there, but like, if you're willing to try, I'm willing to try. So, we wrote him a personal check on the spot and kind of gave him our like profile, what we're looking for, kind of bold, juniper forward, very London dry style, something like a lot of people who can appreciate gin would just like, no, yes, that is London dry gin, right? So something familiar. So we kind of like, we were off at that point. I mean, I think a couple months later, we had some things to try. They were pretty good. We got close enough that we celebrated with alcoholic gin and tonics. And the fun part of that was like 10 minutes later, we had the glasses intermingled, and you couldn't actually taste the difference. And we were like, wow, I thought it would be like close, like a definite B to an A, but it was like A and A1, like they were really close. So, super excited by that idea. And I think while this is all happening, like summer into fall of 2019, like even more people were getting on board, like this mindful drinking movement, this idea of like, hey, I don't need alcohol every time I'm socializing with friends. And starting to question that their relationship with alcohol. And that was super cool to see. And we found ourselves like on this road kind of organically. We weren't even sure other people were thinking about this at the time. So just kind of like starting to become part of a community from its start was really, really cool. We didn't have a product yet. We were just kind of saying like, we'd like to make something, and we're moving closer to that route. So I think like once the liquid kind of came together, we knew this could be real. We like marched it on a Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is great because it's community focused, and they're just like, they're willing to give you a try and help you make your, say, your first batch so you can get started if you're successful. So our campaign ran, I think that October, and you know, we actually hit our goal in a couple of days, which was cool. That means enough people, strangers out on the internet, thought like this idea was interesting enough that it could be a thing and to give it a shot. So that was cool. We ended up getting actual bottles under Christmas trees, getting lots of feedback going into January. And January was cool. Not only do you get cool product feedback telling us like, hey, you know, your taste in gin is awful. We didn't get much of that actually. More like, hey, your label should change like this. Your bottle cap should look like that. Like, think about how to describe your gin to people, give them some recipes to try, you know, at-home bartending and stuff like that. So, you know, that was a fun journey. And I think we did lots of learning over that. And 2020 came and we went to market. And of course, like COVID hit. And, you know, that was strange, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But for a group like us, like we wanted to bring our spirits to people's homes direct. So that was great for, you know, massive eyeballs on the internet. People were trying stuff at home, right? They were trying to bake. They're becoming plant moms and plant dads for the first time. And then the other thing that people started to do were become home bartenders. And I don't know if that was like the Stanley Tucci like videos that were coming out at the time, making Negronis, oddly shaking them instead of stirring them. Whatever he was doing, like I think he inspired a group of people to like think about how to mix interesting things at home. And we wanted in on that and just saying like, you know, you are hunkered down, and you know, if you go 2 weeks straight hunkered down just drinking alcohol, like, you're probably not going to end up in a good place. And we hear that from a lot of customers during that time. And we're like, but I still want the home bartending experience. Like I really like that. You know, I still want a complex flavored drink that I can make at home and do myself. And we're like, this takes the edge off during the week for them because they're still working. Sometimes they're playing teacher with children at home now, not at school. Like they're doing crazy stuff. And the common thread was like, the last thing I can do is be hungover for 2 or 3 days and just bombed out of my mind and just not ready to take on everything that I need to in life, plus the added stressors of COVID and all those things that we went through. So it really became like an interesting product journey of like, we did this for ourselves for flavor so we could just stay sharp during our work week, to becoming almost an essential good, you know, straight out of customers' mouths. They're just like, wow, I really need this to like get me through, because like when people go through the motions at 5 o'clock making a drink, turns out for them to relax in their brain, they don't actually need alcohol. And what they're saying is like going through those motions with something that tastes proper and it looks the part, it feels the part, it pours the right way. I can use my favorite glass and my favorite garnishes. Like they're seeing, wow, this is really relaxing. Like I'm enjoying myself. People who are socializing now aren't really giving that person a hard time because they're not drinking something that looks adult, right? So now there's like this equal social footing for people to connect on. They're not getting called out for not drinking. In fact, it's such an interesting type of beverage category. People will pass it around and have them sip and just go like, wow, that's interesting. It tastes just like mine, but mine has alcohol in it. So it's kind of like this interesting, like you could be, you know, the person like right in the spotlight because you have something new and cool going on. So kind of turns the tables on that socially, which is one of the reasons we wanted to really lean into the space. So, you know, I think we're just a little bit over a year in market, so still young, but like, you know, the movement is growing. It's legitimately here. If you poke around in non-alc, you'll see like the rise of non-alc beers, non-alc wines are coming up strong too. The spirits category is growing and it's becoming more mainstream. And I think like, it's so fantastic to see. And I think really that next step is showing up in more bars and restaurants and hospitality. And I think for me, it was always real cool to see like I think in the hospitality side, everybody wins, right? Because if you as a brick and mortar have more inclusive options that are kind of higher end and look the part of an adult beverage, you can charge more for that. You can get better tips for that. And then in terms of at least something that we made, it's familiar. It's a London dry style gin. So you can reach for Tanqueray when they need alcohol. You can reach for Monday when you don't. But you can make the same drinks, the same recipes. You're not learning a separate set of recipes. It's the same pour counts. It's the same everything. So it should be nice and easy for everybody, more inclusive. So you're getting more patrons coming in that wouldn't normally come because they're like, oh, you don't serve anything other than alcohol, so I won't go there. So you're definitely like welcoming in more business. And I think you're going to have a cool, interesting quality of people coming in that are more diverse, that have more interests, but all have money to spend. And I think like that's good for everybody. So kind of really looking forward to that next level of, how do we get this out into bars? How do we make bartenders comfortable with products like ours? One of my big things too is like, I think Monday kind of speaks for itself on the flavor front. But when I look at any bar, there's a half dozen or a dozen different gins and different whiskeys, right? So it's like, as long as the category exists and we have a bunch of different offerings, I think that really is the key to building a strong bar that's ultra inclusive. So always like Monday to be a part of that, but really it's not about that. It's like, how can we do a proper non-alc bar program for any particular brick and mortar that we talk to?
That was wonderful.
Yeah, cool, thanks. I know, I probably just rambled on, but I love the space. I'm super passionate about people because we talk to customers all the time and they're just like, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have a product like yours. Like I probably would have kept drinking alcohol, and they were already seeing some negative signs of like maybe having too much of the hard stuff and needing to pull back, but knowing in themselves they couldn't pull back cold turkey. They still wanted, you develop flavor on your palate for years and years and years, and to suddenly say like, no thanks, you're gonna have that itch for flavor and complexity as adults. So it's like it's like this great bridge to help get you going to where you want on like a flavor front, without sacrificing the enjoyment, right? So that's what it's all about. And just now it's like, it's funny, like you kind of start something for yourself and, oh, there could be a business attached to it. Like we're now here for the people, we work for them, and we'll keep putting out lovely products as long as people want them and need them.
And people are here for them. There were several things in your story that I wanted to come back to. One, you mentioned how this was one of the drinks that might get passed around at a party as like oh, you're drinking a gin and tonic or a Negroni or what have you with alcohol. Here, try this one. It'll be the same. It's so true. I have done that. And it always goes well. Monday is one of those brands that I bring with me to a party and have people try, because just getting people to taste it is such a big part of it. And then they're just like, mind blown. I didn't know that this was even an option. Now right. I'm going to have to incorporate that into my midweek routine.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I always tell people like it's the most amazing time to be alive when you think about you can have the thing you want, the experience, the whatever it is, but you don't have to have what comes with it. And I guess what I mean by that is like I told somebody like, you can be driving around in your gas-free electric vehicle, eating a hamburger that doesn't have any meat in it, and drinking a latte that doesn't have any cow's milk in it. And everything about that experience is like perfect for you. And I realize like I'm painting in a lot of like very California centric things. I don't actually do all those things at once. I've never done it, but
you could.
I could do it. I could do it. Right. And that's like, it's funny is one of our funny things to get us off the ground was we were thinking about an ad campaign that would be like, you can drink and drive with Monday, right? Because technically it's non-alcoholic. And we're like, yeah, I mean, we have that on the back shelf, but it was like this idea of like, you could pull up next to a cop and like swig Monday from the bottle, and they'll pull you over and have this moment. And it's kind of funny to think about. So like, it's like, what can turn heads, but actually be in actuality like something you want, without the things that you don't want. And I love this too, of like, we're no judgment, right? So there's people that completely don't drink alcohol at all and maybe never have. That's cool. That's okay. You're our customer too. Most of our people are going into these ups and downs, right? Of like, been drinking, now I'm drinking too much, I need to back off. Dry January challenge is coming. Like, I'm going to do this with my family. You know, oh, I have this health thing going on. I'm taking a prescription for 8 weeks. Like, I can't have alcohol, but I still want flavor. Like, when we unravel the reasons why people don't drink, I'd say like, number one, it's their own business and not yours. Number two, there's 100 times more reasons than you can actually think up. And, you know, they're all personal, and they still want a way to connect with other people and not have that be a barrier. And then they also want a proper adult beverage, right? Because I think it's like having something that looks proper that you're drinking with in front of another person. There's just like this thing, right? Of like thousands of years of socializing is like the ultimate social lubricant. It's like unlocks your ability to connect with other people live. And so we want to give that back to people who don't drink alcohol, because for whatever reason, it's like, oh, alcoholic beverage is necessary. And I'm like, okay, what if we remove that idea and just have like really good tasting beverage in common? So I think like, that's what I'd love for this movement to do worldwide, of like just breaking down that barrier of like, alcohol is the must have. I'll even go to this like crazy place of, it's not even about alcohol versus not alcohol. I think one day you'll have all bartenders being like artists / scientists. And I think you can walk up to that bar 20, 30 years down the road, and you go like, here's what I want it to taste like, front, middle, back. Here's what I want it to make me feel like. And it could be nothing, but it could be like, make me high, make me this, make me energized, but let me get home safe. You know, let me do all these things, right? So they're like putting together tinctures and weird stuff. There's alcohol, there's THC, there's CBD, there's even mushrooms, maybe there's green tea extract, maybe who knows what's in there, right? But it's like this journey that you're on through beverage. And I think like, that's the future. But I think the starting point is like, the base should be flavorful and complex. It shouldn't be flavorful, complex, and full of alcohol, right? That should just be one of the options in your tool belt, not the whole like toolbox. And I think that's like the starting point. So that's where we're at. And I'm here to help however I can.
Yeah, I really like that framing of the alcohol should be a tool in your toolbox, but not the entire toolbox. I'm gonna start using that.
Cool. Just made it up on the fly. It's, you know, that'll be my inspiration for the day.
Yeah. Why don't we get into trying the Monday gin before I ask you some more questions about the product, so that
cool.
Yeah, we can get people an understanding of what it is we're talking about and how can this be a replacement for a 1-to-1 of anyone's favorite London Dry style gin.
Cool. So I think we have like a 2-ounce pour. I'll take you through like what I do, and knowing that there's professional bartenders, of which I am not, like, feel free to do your own thing. I go through a multi-step with people live to just give them kind of this foundation that builds, and it ends up into a full-fledged drink. So tall 2-ounce. What I'll do is, it's on ice already. I would switch that around. I would a little nose, just observe kind of the fragrance, and then just small sip, right? Kind of like a wine tasting or any like high-end spirit. And I'll let that kind of sit on your palate a little bit. So full disclosure, I think my product or anyone's product, I think gin over ice, just like straight up, is a little strange. But I think what it does is it gives you like this foundation of what to maybe expect. So interesting things there. I'd say like, I don't hear from anybody that they don't pick up the strong juniper, right? And I think that's the overall objective here is like, yes, there is this big juniper element and it can play through any other like ingredient characteristics that you add to it. So I think what I like to do next is I'll take like a nice soda water and I'll like half fill that guy, and the effervescence from a nice crisp soda water, I think will just like bring up and elevate some of the more I guess like softer ingredients. So you really just get some aromas. It punches it up a little bit. And then you might get some of the undertones, right? There's a little bit of coriander. There's a little bit of cucumber. There's some citrus in there too. So now it's like still juniper, but then now it's like, okay, there you've got some other things going on there, which is cool. So then what I like to do from there is I'll top it up with my favorite tonic. So we kind of work from a base of like the Fever Tree line of tonics, like the Indian straight up was always like the crisper the better, because I think it just like elevates, right? And it's got this idea of like a top end, which is somewhere we like to be. So I'll do that, right? And then squeeze a fresh lime if you have it. At my home desk, I don't have any handy, but always go fresh fruit. Give that a little stir, and then you have a drink we call the OG, something we kind of came up with when we were creating the original liquid. Still one of my faves. Feel like we started with the love of gin first and foremost, so it's probably something we drink a couple times a week. And when the founders get together for, you know, usual business meets and chats, like we've been getting together more in person lately, which has been nice and safe to do so and all that good stuff. So we've been enjoying Monday, because most of the time we were selling in COVID, we were apart and we weren't even drinking our own drinks together, which was kind of strange. So trying to get back to some normalcy with some good stuff. So that's the way we do it. I'd say like you guys as bartenders, I would say like, please, I would say experiment. Definitely open to experimentation, but I always come back to like, we really did mean this to be poured 1-to-1 against an alcoholic gin. So your favorite recipes or anything you're coming up with at the bar that you use, you can use this in replacement 1-to-1. So no thinking like, oh, this is the non-alcoholic, I have to pour a little bit more or a little bit less to get the right balance. You should be fully balanced in pretty much all cases that I've come across. Cool.
You absolutely do get that very juniper forward flavor. And I thought it was very interesting when we just added the soda, before we added the tonic water, it really did change the experience. It brightened it up. You did get a lot more of that citrus and coriander notes in the back. Full disclosure, I'm not a tonic water fan. I went very light on the tonic water.
Yeah.
But I know that's me, and I know there are a lot of tonic waters out there, and I have not tried many of them.
Right.
So I'm working on it.
It's super interesting. You know, I was just a gin and tonic drinker, and then I think I actually, through this process, became a better gin drinker, like more of a gin lover, because I explored the other kind of classic cocktails. So Negronis, I love now. And I honestly had not really heard much about them before. And I'm just like, wow, there's like Negroni culture. It's deep. How have I been missing out on this? And like, it's so elegantly bitter in so many different ways, to almost like, it's like coffee by morning to Negroni at night, almost, like, for me. And I was like, whoa, I'm missing out. Like, so this is like totally changed my journey. And not to get away too much from gin, but like whiskey's our new guy. And I'm like, I've never been a big whiskey person. And our new offering has just taken me down like this whiskey culture route, and I've definitely like, I'm looking forward to fall and getting into more whiskey. Like right now, still doing like G&T's hot weather here in California. But like now I'm looking forward to it and just be like, you know, let's settle in and enjoy, because the depths of flavor there are so deep too. And it's just been like this cool beverage journey. And I feel like, you know, the bartenders that I used to interact with in my 20s, I'm sure many of the folks watching here, it's like, you kind of fall in love with like the beverage journey, and like there's so many interesting ways to make things good and to get people's reactions to the things you make, whether you're making just like classics that they've never had before, or your classic is actually better than the way they've had it, or you're making something new that you're surprising people with. Like having those go-to foundations of flavor is really key, so you can build something consistent and experiment with something that's going to be like stable and you know what it's going to be like. Because when you start layering in a half dozen things, like if something's a little off, it's going to go from amazing to terrible real quick. So that's our big thing, is like, what can we do to provide some sort of like stable foundation of flavor? And then we even hear from people too, it's like some people do like a low alcohol version, so they'll do like half count Monday, half count of their favorite alcoholic gin and build a cocktail that way. They can have twice as many cocktails, or they can have half as many cocktails and get home safely. You know, so it's like one of those things, you can definitely like build this to whatever's going on in your day, which I love.
Yes. In addition to being a lovely juniper forward gin, there's also a slight burn to Monday, which it's subtle and it builds as you keep drinking the beverage, meant to imitate the burn of the alcohol.
Right.
So a question that I get all the time about everything that I have in the store is, how is it made?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How is Monday made?
Sure. So full disclosure, we actually can't patent or trademark anything, so it's like industry trade secret. So I always say that up front of like, I have seen the recipe. To me, it's written in Greek. What I can tell you is like our distiller takes it through some classic distillation processes, but then we also layer in some kind of new and interesting things, like new machinery that maybe doesn't make things in classic ways. So there's some processes around like how one makes essential oils, and we kind of integrate old school and new school to kind of bring out interesting aromas and flavor profiles without the alcohol. So it's a bit of like, we started with a base of like, okay, we know how to make gin and we know how to get it to a certain flavor profile. But the key is like, you don't de-alcoholize it, or at least we don't. So it's like the challenge is like, how do you get that flavor from this process into this bottle minus booze? So we definitely go through some like new school process on top of old school. So to me, it's magic, because I basically told our distiller like, hey, here's what I need it to taste like. Go have at it. So it's like, it's funny, as the founder of Monday, like we own the recipe. I've seen it. I don't really understand it. And he's like, don't worry, I got you. Like as long as I have these stills and I have this machinery and I have these ingredients, like we're good. So it's like, okay, if you're good, I'm good. And that's kind of how I tell that tale, because you definitely don't want me in back there making the stuff. Who knows what'll happen.
So it is a distilled beverage, but it is not de-alcoholized.
Right, it's not de-alcoholized. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's not like, so I think that people are most familiar with is de-alcoholized wine, right? Because that's pretty much how it's done today. Like that takes a different set of equipment, and wine's a whole nother beast that I couldn't even begin to speak about. It's so crazy hard. So yeah, we definitely don't go through that process. So it's more like from the ground up, we'll build flavor combinations and profiles.
Great. So another question that I get all the time about everything in the store is, is it really alcohol free?
Yeah.
Or does it have
So
trace alcohol in it? And it sounds like because
gotcha.
you're not de-alcoholizing, it shouldn't have trace alcohol, but
It is
I'm not sure. Does it?
yeah. We are trace alcohol, kind of like pretty much all beverages that are out there in the non-alc space. Essentially what it comes down to is like there's an element of food science to bring flavor into a liquid that isn't alcohol. You actually need a bit of alcohol. It helps to bond the flavor together. So it is trace. It's definitely below the legal limit of 0.05. So the way I always frame it to people is like, it's impossible to get drunk on something that's non-alcoholic legally because you're drinking so much water, it dilutes the alcohol concurrently, and you're more likely to drown from drinking too much of the water than you are to get drunk. So that's always how I frame it. And then the other way we frame it too is like through this journey, learning about what has alcohol in it. A lot of common food has alcohol in it, and it's way more than the legal limit, right? So I think my biggest surprise was not the ripe fruit, like ripe banana, ripe pineapple kind of has high alcohol content, not soy sauce, because you don't use that much of it. It was like burger buns. Burger buns can have like, I think 4 to 6% alcohol by volume, like crazy stuff.
I
Yeah,
didn't know it was that high.
Depending on what it is. Yeah. So it's all about the yeast composition and how long you let it go. And that's a whole nother animal, but alcohol's in a lot of the stuff that we take in daily and maybe don't think about it. So I think like being non-alcoholic, I've learned like it's so minuscule that it's in your head if you think something's going on with that. And it's just like we have the minimal amount because our beverage area makes you like get down to the very nitty gritty. Whereas like, hey, a bread maker doesn't have to disclose anything. Right. All that to say is you also can't get drunk on bread. Right. So it's like hey, let's just take a step and make sure we're in a good space. So I'd say like if you're, you have an allergy to alcohol, you have have or have had a problem with alcohol, non-alcoholic drinks straight physically aren't really going to affect your body. It's more about what it does mentally, right? So we always caution people who are thinking about trying one of ours and they've had some hardship with alcohol, like consult someone that kind of knows your story before going there. We're not trying to grab sales and from people who might have a problem with what's going on. So if gin is a trigger for you in your past life, non-alcoholic gin might be too. And we're the last ones who are going to say, oh, just roll the dice and see what happens. Like we're always like, hey, use caution. This is the tool in the tool belt. We don't want it to take over your life, right? So it's we always tread lightly about stuff like that, and always ask people to use caution, seek help, seek advice, from people who know you better than we do.
Yes, I get a lot of that category of things as well, and I always tell people whatever is comfortable for you. Some people come into the shop and they're looking for non-alcoholic beer, or spirits, or wine. Some people are looking for exactly not those. And have lots of other things like teas and seltzers and herbal beverages. There's definitely whatever works for that individual. Folks who are pregnant or have illness related or religious reasons for abstaining, it's definitely on an individual basis.
Right. Right.
We are not medical professionals.
Yeah, totally. We always say that. We're like, hey, we're not doctors. Here's what's going on. Here's other products that you probably have that have more of whatever we've got going on. So that's one of the other reasons we always do like hey, we want to start at a base. So we do the 0 calories, 0 carb, no sugar. And it's just like, so whatever you've got going on in your health, or you have fitness goals, or whatever's going on, you start from the 0. And I think if you want a little alcohol, you can have a low alcohol beverage by adding your own, or I'm cool with sugar today, I'm good, so I can have a sugary sided like ingredient panel to go with my drink. We don't want to start from a sugary place or an alcoholic place, because you can't go backwards from that, and then we're excluding people we're trying to include.
Yes. And you mentioned that it is a 0 sugar, 0 carb, 0 calorie beverage. Do you know what
Right.
the average calorie count for a regular shot of gin might be? It's not something I've checked.
Yeah, it's not that high. I think it's 80 to 120 calories. But when you think about, gosh, I'll go back to my 20s, like, you know, God, on a Saturday night, somebody's birthday, like we're talking like 10 to 12 cocktails in the night, right? I mean, it adds up. And even if you're drinking it with soda, or for me, I was drinking with tonic sugary, and you know, depending on which one it is, like it can get up in the calorie count. So you could be consuming like a day's worth of calories through liquid, and then of course you're not getting any nutrition. So those things can definitely compound. And I think about that in my own journey of like, wow, how many times did I do that? And then, you know, Monday rolls around and I'm like, oh, I'm not happy with how I look or what I'm weighing or how I'm feeling. And, you know, you just like, oh, you can directly point back to some of the things that you were doing earlier in your week. And I think like, no judgment there. I definitely was there. I don't regret those good times. I knew I overdid it a bit because nothing like this was around. But like, if something like this is around, you can kind of build whatever you need to as a result from that zero everything kind of foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. With all of the non-alcoholic drink options, there's a drastic calorie count difference. Once you remove the alcohol from the beverage, it's incredible how calorie dense alcohol is.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting too. And I love that it's like we kind of want to provide healthy alternatives, right? And we can think about health in a number of ways, because like we can message like, hey, it is 0 calorie, it's 0 sugar, 0 carb, and then, you know, no alcohol. So now that'll hit the same person and they'll only hear one of those 5 things, right? Of like, because cool, I'm on a keto diet, so 0 carb is what I'm after. And then someone over here is like, oh, you know, I'm diabetic, I have to avoid sugar. Like, cool, I'm over here. So it's great to have a lot of superpowers kind of in your back pocket, and then you can just express those to a wide group of people. They'll hear what they want, and then hopefully that attracts them to us, or, you know, other products like ours that are kind of going for that better for you thing, which I'm all about.
Yes, exactly. It's just a wonderful category to be a part of, and it is growing so quickly and so dynamically in the past 2 years. It's really just astonishing, and especially in the last 6 months, I know that I've spoken to and I speak to a lot of people who are starting that journey of exploring their relationship with alcohol, looking to perhaps change it temporarily, permanently, and what have you. Definitely a variety, or at least to just shake it up, and look for more options. Look for Monday night options versus Saturday night options, looking for that halfway point of doing maybe a half shot of a traditional gin and half shot of an alcohol-free one in the same drink, or alternating your drinks or whatever.
Right.
But I think that particularly this past, you know, year and a half or so has been really hard for a lot of people, and many people have been drinking perhaps more than in the past. And I've seen a lot in the last 6 months, particularly, of people saying, I reached a point, I need to slow down, you know, whatever it is that's going on. And I need to reevaluate this and try some more options, look into non-alcoholic or alcohol-free choices, how to integrate that into my lifestyle. So I love hearing people, you know, looking for those options. And I think that they've chosen, or it has been brought to their attention at a great time, because now there are so many incredible options, whereas 2 years ago, there really weren't any.
Yeah.
This category had like 2 options in the US that were available.
Right.
It's a very different time now.
Yeah.
So yeah, now that people are starting to go out more and we're starting to reopen our bars and restaurants, it's important to consider that more people are looking for more options in what they drink. I believe that it's really important for bars and restaurants to incorporate alcohol-free or non-alcoholic options, not only as an if a customer asks for one option, but also to have it written on your menu. Just speaking personally, I would probably never ask a bartender, hey, can you make me a non-alcoholic drink? I'm not drinking. You know, I'll order a soda and lime, I'll order something.
Right.
But I wouldn't ask like, hey, can you just like get creative or something? That's not me, that's not my style. But if there were an option on the menu, you know, if it were gin and tonic, if it were something totally creative that didn't use alcohol-free spirits that you made in-house using shrubs or syrups or tinctures or anything, some interesting adult beverage that doesn't contain alcohol, that is an act of inclusion that, you know, it would speak to me as someone who's just usually not a drinker. It would speak to someone who's on medication. It would speak to someone who is on this journey of looking at more options and exploring how drinking is maybe or maybe not such a great part of their life right at that moment. It's speaking to the people who are pregnant or who are with the people who are pregnant. It's speaking to a lot of people who, I hear a lot of people say, oh, Pittsburgh is a drinking town. But I also hear a lot of people saying, I'm so glad that there are more non-alcoholic options out there now. And I think that part of it is that no one was asking. You know, if you're at a bar, the assumption is you're going to drink an alcoholic beverage or a water or a Coke. But what if there was another option? And myself as the Open Road and Chris with Monday as one of our lovely alcohol-free spirit brands are just here to say that there are so many options and that we would love to help work with bars and restaurants to incorporate those into their beverage programs to be inclusive of all potential guests.
No, you nailed it. Absolutely. 100%. Like this is, it's such a critical piece too, because think about everybody in the movement moved into the internet, right? Just due to COVID. So for a year, they kind of learned about their own drinking habits. They found non-alcoholic options that they like Monday or like athletic beer or, you know, whatever. It came to their door. They learned how to use it, integrated into their life. And then they used it for up to a whole year. Now that doors are opening back up, they have to learn how to be humans in real life again. They're still going to go back to their favorite bars and meet up with their friends, but now they don't have those tools, right? And I think this is that moment of like, in order to keep people on their healthy habit with non-alc products and whatever else they're using to keep themselves in a healthier place, it needs to be where they go. And I think like this is the right time to have that conversation and just say like, why not be more inclusive? And speaking as someone with a national brand, I'm happy to share too. A lot of people are taking note. We get a ton of organic reach from hospitality managers, director of beverage, at hospitality groups or brick and mortar mom and pops, all you name it. We hear from them and saying like, hey, I've been noticing, or hey, my bar patrons have been coming in saying like, I need to carry this. It looks like you guys are one of the leaders. Like, will you help me out? How do I get some of your products? How do I try it? So it's coming. We haven't really been like approaching them. They've been approaching us. So I can say like, this movement's happening. I'd say like to your point of like Pittsburgh's a drinking town, you could actually use any town's name and that would be like the idea, right? And I hear that a ton, and I hear that about middle of the country cities a ton. And you know what? I'll just blow your mind right now and say like some of our most important doors that do the most business with us are in places you wouldn't expect, like Columbus, Ohio. We have doors in Alabama, Mississippi. We have places that you just wouldn't think would have like this alcove of people who are interested in non-alc options. I'd say like you're 100% wrong, because we ship to all 50 states. We go to small towns. It's not just the coast. It's not just New York and LA. They're definitely everywhere. People, once they know options like this exist, they gravitate towards them to at least try them and integrate it into their life somehow. no one's saying like, oh, you know, you can try us and go cold turkey and you just never need to drink alcohol again. No one's saying that. They're just saying like, hey, if stuff like this exists, you might drink a little bit less alcohol. And I think we all kind of low key know that that might be good for you to do, right? So it's like, how do I not change my lifestyle, the way I interact with people and socialize, while still taking in a beverage that won't kill me slowly?
Well said.
Cool.
Yeah, and so as this is part of the USBG Education Week, and part of the USBG Pittsburgh chapter, thank you to everyone who's watched our video today. If anyone in the Pittsburgh area is interested in learning more about non-alcoholic options, please follow the Open Road. It's at Open Road Bar PGH on all channels. Feel free to send me a message, send me an email, it all goes to me. And my name is Mel. Thank you to our guest, Chris Boyd, co-founder of Monday Spirits. Just to get a nice little close up on here. This is the bottle of Monday Gin that we've been talking about today.
Awesome.
Yeah, and
cool.
Thank you all to watching. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Mel.